Welcome to Dance to Heal. I'm your host, Jenny C. Cohen. Join me as I share stories of how dance and movement can bring healing in a way that is safe and tailored to your life. I'm a cancer survivor, mother of two, and an award-winning performer who found that movement was vital to my recovery. I created Dance to Heal Wellness and also authored the best-selling book, Outside of Recovery, Dancing My Way Back to Myself After Breast Cancer. I will bring new techniques to help you on your dance journey and healing path. Are you ready to move? Dance to Heal starts now. Torva Logan underwent a spiritual transformation after a 6-month extraordinary ordeal of battling the Canadian healthcare system post an aggressive stage 4 ovarian cancer diagnosis and subsequent complications. She draws on her tenacious audacity, military background, and infinite possibilities training to help women face life-altering challenges to overcome adversity, build resilience, and live a life of intentional joy. Torva created the empowering approach rooted in grit, grounded resilience for inner transformation. Welcome, Torva. What an honor and what a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
So audience, I'm going to directly speak to you right now. Torva is one of my heroes because we're both survivors, and yet she was this advocate for herself in the medical system. And I just want to, okay, before we talk about like Jenny's take on it, I remember when I was in the middle of treatment, it was enough just to take a breath and take another breath and then bribe myself with dance activities to continue my treatment. How did you summon the courage to speak up against the system that was being so unfair to you at the time?
It's interesting because, when I was going through everything that I was going through, by the time I really had an opportunity to speak up against the system, it had just really screwed up. I mean, it left me to die. I had to leave the country to get medical treatment. So I had to leave Canada to get treatment in the United States. Thank God I was able to do that. And I already knew so many people that had been screwed over by this same system. Whether that was before I got cancer, I knew of some people that were close to home. And after I started to talk about what was happening to me, I started to hear from other people too. So when I was challenged with this, this really offhanded remark by the Minister of Health that the healthcare system doesn't always get it right and folks are allowed to complain, I was infuriated. So much so that I no longer cared. I didn't need courage at that point. I had all that I needed within me, and I knew that it was the right thing to do, to stand up, speak out, write an open letter, and say, no, that's not okay.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I really do love that because for a lot of us, when we're in the middle of treatment, we're scraping the barrel,
Yeah.
right? We're really scraping the barrel. And I think other people might have found it very disheartening.
Of course.
We weren't, you're not even humanized in that situation.
Of
And you were
course.
so angry. You spoke up for everyone.
Absolutely, because I was getting exceptional care. And that is what, when you have, like we have in Canada, we have a quote unquote universal healthcare system that's got to serve its purpose. It's got to be universal. And when you tell people that are in a dire situation, having a stage 4 aggressive cancer before it even gets caught, and then you're like, well, just sit over here and wait and we'll get to you. And then you don't get to them and you forget them. And, it's like, all bets are off at that point. When you have nothing left to lose, you lose it. I lost it, but I did it in a very constructive way. So I didn't really lose it, but it was like, I mean, and what else did I have to lose at that point? Like, what's the worst that they could do to me? Take my healthcare away? Well, they already did that inadvertently, right? So bring it on.
Right? So, and because we're also in the dance community together here, right?
Yeah.
And we do have members of our community that are still fundraising for their care, even in the US.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's just ridiculous.
It is, I think, and as one of the things that a lot of Americans have found eye-opening talking to me, because I am a dual citizen. So, is like, wow, I thought the Canadian healthcare system was so great. I thought they just took care of everybody. Well, no, in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. But, you've got like thousands of people dying every year on a wait list in Canada. That is true. You can go, my resource for that is secondstreet.org. Thousands of people die waiting for treatment, waiting for tests, waiting for imaging. And that does not include the people where the treatment actually started and then they died because they had waited so long for the treatment. Like once the treatment starts, they're no longer counted in that category. So I would have been one of those latter people. I never would have been counted as, I would have eventually started treatment, but it would have been too late. By the time I finally got to start treatment in the States, I was weeks away from the end of life. And that was another thing for me, this whole journey, Jenny, of like, and you probably know this, of like, you're facing your mortality and you just stop caring about the things you used to care about. Like, oh, what if someone sees me? Or, what if I rock the boat too hard?
I love that. I really love that because you really do stop caring. You
Yeah.
do. You really do. Well, it's less also, it's more you understand what's important to care about,
Right. Yeah. I think that's a better way of putting it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the fact that you think the grass is greener on the other side of it, right? And it really isn't. It's always this being able to see fully where you are, what you're
Yeah.
not happy about, and then feeling empowered, or at least supported to do something about it. You know,
Yeah.
like
Right.
so like when my husband went through cancer, because he went through cancer 20 something years ago, and I
Yeah.
was working as an occupational therapist in the city at a very, very well-known rehabilitation hospital. And I remember my boss going, "Well, he'll be fine in chemo. You still come to work." And I said to her, I love her dearly. I
Yeah.
said to her at the time, "You're welcome to either hold my spot or give my job away. I will be my husband's side for every one of his chemotherapies because I worked in the nursing system. I mean, I was in
Yeah.
hospitals. I know
Right.
all the nurses who walk on water for me, by the way. I love nurses. I think they're the most amazing people in the whole world. I'm sorry, doctors, but they
They
literally
are.
keep, right? They keep the hospitals and all the things going, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also knew how understaffed and overworked they are. And I was saying to myself, I already knew automatically, oh, he has to go through chemotherapy in a chemo ward, right? Ambulatory. I was going to be the one to bring him and be by his side. And if he needed anything, I was going to be there to help him and advocate for him
Yeah.
because I already knew. And then
Yeah.
he did the same thing for me when I went through my 16 cycles of chemo. He told his job, I will work from her bedside when she's getting her chemotherapy. She's
That
not
was
going by herself. No one's taking her. I'm going to be there.
that was one of the things that made me so angry, is because I had to go to the United States to get treatment. I couldn't have that. My husband is a personal trainer, and this took us by such surprise. Was very much 100% like in person. We're shifting that now, but so he couldn't come to the United States with me. And so for, the health minister to be so cavalier about my experience, yes, I spoke up for other people, but I was furious. Like, how dare you be so cavalier with the fact that I had to leave the country, and don't even get me started on how much I'm paying in taxes, or
Yes.
we're paying in taxes. But I couldn't have my husband there with me. And, we're best friends. We're soulmates. Like, we are thick as thieves. Um, just like any relationship, we've had our ups and downs, but we are really tight. Like, we are always there for each other. And that wasn't just taking its toll on me. It took a toll on him. Like, he could not be there for his wife.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that first time you had to travel from Canada to the States, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I stayed in the United States the majority of the time. I was, so like 6 months. So from September to April, I was primarily in the States staying with my parents. I came home and visited about every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what was going on.
Mhm.
And yeah, the second time I was up here visiting, and I had a medical emergency. I had a bowel obstruction caused by my previous surgery where they took all the things out. I had an adhesive bowel obstruction, which is scar tissue. And it became obstructive while I was in Canada. We went to the ER. long story short, that hospital basically was like, we can't help you. So we're just going to let you sit here and hope it resolves itself, regardless of the fact that it was not clearly not resolving. They couldn't get me on a transport list because they couldn't get a doctor to accept me. They said it's going to be, the waiting list for transport was as long as her arm, whatever that means. And so we ended up unplugging me from the hospital. Like, here I am on a nasal gastric tube. I can't eat, I can't drink. And like just gunning it for, we have to go down island, get on a ferry, a 2-hour ferry to Vancouver. My parents are waiting, south of Vancouver. Donovan takes me all the way to Vancouver, like across on the ferry and everything. Donovan's my husband. And he can't go any further because he's gotta go home. He's got to return to work. So, we're like tearfully hugging. My dad's like, we got to go so we can beat the rush to the border. Cause like, yeah, it was awful. And it was so unexpected. Like, that was probably one of the most traumatizing things that happened through this entire cancer journey, because I looked so like I was recovering. I had two chemos left, and I was doing really well. I started running a little bit, and he was like, wow, you're doing so good. And the next day, boom, I'm in the hospital with a tube up my nose. So it was, yeah. And then being, wrenched away to the US, and he's like, I know you're going to have surgery. Are you going to make it? So
Yeah. Oh
the
gosh.
this
Girl.
is what I want to say. Anger is a positive emotion. It's an emotion. Every emotion, it has positive and negative components. So when people are like, oh, don't get angry, I'm like, no, screw that. Anger is a positive emotion. It can be a positive emotion. It's what you do with it that really counts.
I love that. I'm just gonna say I love that on repeat. I'll have a button. I love that. I love that. And then go on to my next point.
Like the Staples button,
I
only
know.
it's I.
My husband had emergency bowel obstruction surgery the May before I was diagnosed. So we
Wow.
absolutely understand. I understand. So audience member, we just want to explain something. When a bowel obstruction first shows up, for my husband, he thought he had gas, like just bad gas. He hadn't, and he had already, because he had testicular cancer that had spread up into his kidney. So he had had a major surgery that
Yeah.
he had a scar. It went from like the bottom of his sternum around his belly button all the way down to his pubic bone, like all the way
Wow.
down. So they had
Yeah.
opened him up and took his insides and dumped him on his chest and then cleaned out the lymph nodes that had cancer by the kidneys, and then
Oof.
kind of just flipped it back in. So
Yeah.
so in 2014, that was 19 years before. And he, because he was so active, never had a bowel obstruction, even though we found out later that there was a high occurrence for bowel obstructions with that type of surgery.
Yeah. Like 20% or something.
20%. And he was that
Yeah.
negative, that whatever weird on the bell curve, nothing. They were shocked he had a bowel
Yeah.
obstruction.
After 19 years.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
this is crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we were doing RVing, and
Eek.
he had always had, like, if he had trouble passing gas, we just give him gas X, and he was having trouble that first night at the RV place. So we took him to the ER, and they gave him extra strong gas X medication. Nothing was passing, and they're like, we need to put a nasogastric tube down his nose, just like you. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're not hearing bowel sounds in his stomach,
Yeah.
so there's a good chance that he and here's the thing, because he had had cancer before, like you,
Oh, that's scary.
right?
Yeah.
You don't know what they're gonna find because they don't know. They think it's a bowel obstruction, but they're not sure. Did the cancer go to his stomach? Like, we didn't know,
Right. And even if it's a
right?
bowel obstruction, it could have been caused by a tumor for all you
And
knew, right? Unless they did
exactly,
imaging. Yeah. That's scary.
exactly, right? And you're watching the tube drain, and then his wasn't getting lighter, and it wasn't clearing, and then all of a sudden
Yeah,
it was,
exactly.
right. It was all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was, you know what? We need to schedule you for surgery. We were lucky the next day, which was Monday then, there was a vascular surgeon coming on, like on what is it, coming to on duty.
Yeah.
And when he came out of surgery, he said to us, it's good I was there because it was wrapped around his aorta, the scar tissue. And I did an appendectomy because if he had ever had appendicitis, they never would have found it from the scar tissue that enveloped his entire appendix.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about your miracle, and I just
That's
completely was
amazing.
reliving, right, what my husband went through. And so for my caregivers, I'm going to be really clear with you. I was so stressed out, similar to Donovan, that there
Yeah,
absolutely has to be work done for us who are caregiving. Please, please, please make sure you're releasing the trauma of that, because here's your loved one going through this thing. You can't do anything about it. And if you're on a cusp of your nervous system and your immune system trying to fight off anything, if you're not doing anything, you will overload it. And I'm
oh, absolutely.
folks, like, this is really serious, like, just so you know. Okay, so
Yeah,
back to our
absolutely.
topic, but I'm just telling you, caregivers, if you are not decompressing and releasing the trauma of watching your loved one, you are in danger of not being able to care for them yourself.
And getting
And yourself.
sick yourself,
Well, I that too,
you know?
that too, right? But I didn't want to put
Yeah,
that, that's knock on wood, right? But
of
it's just being
course.
this
No, yeah,
awareness, right?
yeah.
So now, tell us what you want us to be aware of in terms of um, your present focus. Because, you shared with me before we hit the recording button that you were now speaking about rising from the ashes, which you did twice.
Yeah, a lot of people, as I'm going through this journey, I hear comments like, wow, you're so strong. How do you do that? Like, how can you just get up and, kind of do this thing? And so I do talk about rising from the ashes because I think I've been through, I mean, we all have, right? But I've been through a lot of negative things in my life. And I remember from a very young age, I was being bullied in like middle school.
Yeah.
Actually, I was bullied in elementary school, but I remember in middle school having this thought of like, this is all happening for a reason. This is making me a stronger person.
Mm-hmm.
And being very aware of problems, challenges, life events that we may want to turn tail and run away from, but being aware of those as transformative has helped me get through some of the worst things that I've been through in my life. And this was one of them. So when I got the cancer diagnosis, there was a part of me that was kind of just already like, bring it on.
Mm-hmm.
And when my doctor looked me in the eyes and said, this will end your life, I've always been a challenger too, Jenny. I've always been someone that was just like, oh yeah.
You say
Watch.
that.
When she said that, that activated the challenger in me. And that was it. I was like, no, it will not. Oh, over my dead body. Sorry. But so I look at that strength as it is, it is all mental, it's perception, it's how I look at the world. It is what I am willing to accept. I think for a lot of people, this is something I think Canadian healthcare in particular gets wrong. I've seen it over and over again. There's not enough giving of hope because a lot of people hear those words, this will end your life. Boom, their life just ended. I mean, I don't mean they die in the office, but they can't come back from that mentally. They're so like, my doctor knows everything. My doctor is right. Oh my God, I better start preparing for end of life.
Yep. Yep. That's it. That's it. I mean,
No.
you know, um, I always firmly believe that even people who don't understand they have resilience, they actually do. And
Oh, yeah.
I do love the fact that you're presenting your program. Tell us about your program that talks about resilience.
It does. I am such a believer in resilience. And I think you nailed it on the head. Even people that don't think they have resilience, like you wouldn't be here where you are in this moment in time if you did not have some kind of resilience. So I think of it as a muscle. It's about cultivating resilience. I mean, like doing things that are difficult. And I don't mean super difficult. Okay. I mean, I'm not saying like, go sit in an ice tub for half an hour, but have the resilience enough to start and put your foot in and hold it in there for 30 seconds and pull it out. And the next day maybe it's 45 seconds, and the next day maybe you're doing your whole leg, like you build on that. So the program that I'm doing is, we're both infinite possibility certified trainers, right?
Oh yeah, we are. We're
Yeah, we are.
Emmys. Yes.
Right. So I'm taking that framework plus what I have learned in my life about resilience, my military background, just having been a single mom, like all of these challenges in my life and all my experiences, and I'm putting them together. And I'm using the framework of mindset, manifestation, combined with resilience to help people really get out of this place of being unstuck or feeling unsupported, feeling like they're not resilient and they can't handle, the things that life throws at them, and really helping them find that power within themselves again and connect with it and move forward with it.
I love that.
I'm really excited about it.
I love that. What a amazing and not inventive, elevated way of taking our program that we know from the infinite possibilities and turning it into another layer for people.
Yeah.
I firmly always believe that there can never be enough healers in the world, ever, ever. We're on. There could be, a billion
Yeah.
people and 3 billion healers, and there still wouldn't be enough healers, honestly, because I just feel so strongly, right, that
Sure.
um um your audience member who's well, the audience member who's listening, who needs to be working with you, is listening to this right now. Tell us
Yeah.
what does the acronym GRIT, which is your program, what does it stand for?
Right. Grit is a philosophy, and it's part of the program. It stands for Grounded Resilience for Inner Transformation. I think the grounded part is important too, because we can like, oh, resilience, resilience, resilience. And that's not just about like pushing through, gritting your teeth and just suffering through it. It's like it's staying present, it's staying grounded, it's dealing with it day to day. A long, long time ago in my history, I was going through some really awful things with my child in custody court. And yeah, my child was being abused. So, and I was being, gaslit and maligned by social services instead of helped.
Mm-hmm.
And that was awful. Like as a mother, all you want to do is protect your child, and to be, told like that you're the problem, and that if you keep, bringing this allegation up that, you're going to lose custody. It was horrible. Every day I would go to bed and I would cry my eyes out. And I would say, I would tell Donovan, like, because Donovan and I had just gotten married when this was going on. And I would say, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And I would cry myself to sleep. And I would wake up the next day and I would say, okay, let's go do this. It's
That's
like,
great.
my point is, it's a day to day. Sometimes it gets to be such a slog. Like you said, when you have cancer, like it's enough just to think to breathe, but it's important.
It is important. So I have permission to speak on this for my daughter because she's now, over 21. She and her twin brother are 25, almost 26. And
Wow.
when she was going through her really, really challenging times, where she started to do pretty severe self-harm and was making plans to not be around anymore. And we were very lucky she decided to share with that with me before that final acting of that step. And it's
Yeah.
been hard. I mean, it's easier now and we have different challenges, but those first 2 years of not being able to, and she told us this, she didn't want us to trust her. Because
Wow.
we had like all our knives and scissors. Do you know pencil sharpeners have blades in them? We found
Yeah.
everything, right? Everything that could be a point. She was using compasses for math. We had to take those away because there was a point to it.
Yeah.
Everything that was sharp. She
Yeah.
helped us
Lock it
identify
out.
anything that could be used, and we locked it all down. And we did very aggressive kitten fostering because the purrs of the cats and kittens are actually very healing. And so it was this. I had to throw myself fully into taking care of her, knowing she might not make it out.
Yeah.
Right? You
Right.
do what you do, just take it one day at a time. Similar to the years before when her brother was diagnosed with type 1, and when they're very new in their diagnosis and not stabilized yet, they can die in their sleep. There's like a 9% chance of them never making it
Wow.
in
I
the
didn't know
mornings.
that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Right? So it's
Whew.
like, you and I didn't talk very much about it then. I'm very, very open about it now because people are saying, oh, well, type 1 diabetics are they're athletes, and the guy in the whatever boy band, and he has type 1, he's married to that beautiful Indian princess star person. And I'm like, yes, and the majority of people living with it, right? The parents are living with the knowledge that their child may be that 1 in 100 that does not
Yeah.
wake up. right? And
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
what
kind of
you do
like
as a parent.
you you just
You
don't
have to
wait.
know that, you have to know the worst case
Yeah,
scenarios,
right.
and then try to fight against it, or
Well,
push against it.
you
But
endure, you get the
yeah,
grit that you're talking about.
exactly.
Because I was like, uh, I have two miracle babies. They're from IVF, from my husband getting cancer from years before. So I was like, that's okay. We're just going to take it one day at a time. Every day is a blessing, similar to what you were saying for
Yeah.
yourself. And then I want to ask you, please, because we may have audience members who are like, oh my God, I couldn't do half the things that you were doing to either one of us. Like I couldn't do it. And
Mm.
what will we say to them? Because I'm like, you're not acknowledging what you've gone through, audience member who's saying, oh my God, your
Yeah,
story is, oh my, so
exactly.
much. And I'm like, oh, ho, ho, ho. What would you
Yeah.
say?
It's funny when you start talking to people about that feel that way, what they've been through, and you're just, in your mind, you're just like, holy crap. Oh my goodness, so the first thing I say is, let's take stock of what you've been through, let's take stock of what you've endured, or what you've experienced. Because I've noticed that the people who don't have as many life challenges, they feel like they are resilient. It's the people that have been through some stuff, and maybe it's they don't want to acknowledge the stuff they've been through. And so, because in order to acknowledge that they're resilient or they're capable, they have to then kind of go, oh yeah, I guess so. Like, gosh, I want to I want to use my husband as an example, but I won't like share his background. But he's
Sorry,
been through some
Donovan.
stuff.
Yeah.
Donovan, don't listen to this. No, I'm just kidding. He's been through some stuff in his childhood and his life, right? So but he's just like, I don't think I could do what you've done. And I was like, I know you. I know damn well you would. When your back's against the wall and you're faced with those choices, do you think maybe, well, I want to take the easy way out, but the easy way out isn't such a pretty picture. So, I that's what I say is, like, first take stock of what you've done. And secondly, like, change the way you're talking about it, because I had just read earlier in 2023, Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo. I
Yes.
loved it. It's like this whole, I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect motto. Like, there is nothing that can't be figured out. And
Nothing.
that includes you. So you may not have all the answers. How am I going to get through this? Like, being resilient isn't about how am I going to get through this and having a plan and then being like, okay, first we're going to do this, 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 and this. Because then your best laid plans, you know what they say. So I think it's about, first, acknowledge what you've been through. Second, change the way you're talking to yourself. You absolutely can get through it. And it may be every day just saying, sometimes it's, I don't have a choice. I'm going to get through this.
I love
And
that.
sometimes it's, I want to get through this. I can do it day by day.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I want to make one point reminder for all the Donovans in the world who stuck by us, like my Michael, right?
Yeah.
There are just as many people I know of whose spouses left them during their cancer because it was too hard.
Yeah. I
I'm going to
can't.
acknowledge that right now, and nothing against them. It's just
Yeah.
for the person going through that event, and to have your spouse use that as a reason to leave. Many, many people that I've
Right.
witnessed it happening. I've met other clients when we were going through chemo. They're like single now because their partners left them. Even the
Yeah.
woman who was on America's Got Talent, a Nightbird, who passed away at a very young age, when she was diagnosed with cancer, her husband left her. So I want to really be grateful to people like
Yeah.
your Donovan and my Michael who
Yeah.
stuck by us, right? Because that's trauma. That's really hard to stick by someone getting sick and then
Yeah.
being there for them. And then
Yeah.
again, it brings me back to that story of him having to drive you to the border of Canada and the US and release you on the ferry. I mean, wow,
Yeah.
So okay, that's one. And then the other thing is, before we get too carried away, audience members, I know you're chomping at the bit. How do you find Torva? So you can find her on Instagram, and also her website at torvalogan.com. TORVALOGAN.com. You got
Mhm.
to find her there. She'll have all her resources for you on how to
Yeah.
get in touch with her and do her program. One other thing I want to ask you about, which is when you said, just make a decision. Is it really that simple?
No,
Okay, so what does that
but
mean?
yes, yes
Give
and
us
no.
yeah, exactly. Oh, without, Entice
Very
us a
needed.
little bit. Entice a little bit. Like, what does that start with? So then we can finish it with you when they
Well,
do your program.
consider what your choices are.
Mhm.
So when you consider what your choices are, and let me use my cancer, like going to the United States for the first time, or even the second time, I guess. In both cases, the choice was, I could stay here or I could go. What does each choice look like? Like, this doesn't have to be an in-depth decision. I don't need to get out a piece of paper and pro and con this one, right? If I stay here, things don't look good for me. I am left in somebody else's hands, having to trust a system that I've already heard a lot of bad things about, failing people. Or I could take matters into my own hands. And that may not work out either, but at least I did something. At least I didn't, like, for me, the idea of just sitting around waiting isn't ever gonna play out for me. Like, I don't do that, because it's my life. And I really believe in advocating for yourself. And sometimes that's advocating to yourself, for yourself. Like,
Mm.
hey, you deserve to live. What would you tell a friend?
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna just, yes. Sometimes we're not even aware we talk so differently to ourselves versus to our
Yeah.
friends or even a stranger. And I want to bring in a story. I'm in a mentorship where my mentor brought in Dr. Ilya, who is America's happiness doctor, and he shared a story with us about how before he became the happiness doctor for America, he had a private practice, and his his practice was known for people who were at the end of it. They're ready to get divorced. They were ready to take their own lives. He saved so many people, and his
Wow.
his practice flourished by word of mouth. He never took out an ad.
Wow. Well, I
Yeah,
bet.
he
Gosh,
was
when you
just this amazing,
at
amazing
that
person,
point.
right?
Yeah.
And there's more to his story, but one specific part of it was he said, when I was born, my father, very gruff, because he was born in Athens, Greece. He was like a macho man. His dad kind of like walked into the nursery, and there were 5 babies, and he asked the nurse, which one's mine? And the nurse said, the happy one, because Dr. Ilya was the only baby smiling. And from
Uh,
that point onward, until even now, that's why he's now the happiness doctor. He was always called the happy one. That was his brand. He was branded throughout all his childhood. So
happy
we talk
one.
about branding, right? Or figuring out who you are, what's your sole purpose. And he said, unfortunately, in my practice, now remember, he worked in his practice for 19 years, saving people. And he said the majority of the labels people are given are not, oh, they're the happy one. It was
Yeah.
three, it was three labels or brands. It was either you were stupid, you were fat, or you were ugly. That was the predominant labels people were labeled with as babies.
Huh.
And he said, this is why it's really important for you to acknowledge that. You
Wow.
may carry, this inner voice that says you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, right? And to get in right in front of what you just suggested, Torva, what are your choices? You can
Yeah.
say, I'm not listening to that voice anymore. I choose this
Right.
new voice.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
from that perspective, then re-look at your choices. Because if you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm too stupid, then you don't have choices. You're too stupid to have choices.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it always comes back to what we believe about ourselves. Even our beliefs about the world are shaped
Absolutely.
by our beliefs about ourselves. So, if you don't feel like you're capable, if you feel like you're too unworthy, then yeah, your choices aren't going to look so good, or you're not going to acknowledge choices that you really have. So like we said, if you were talking to somebody else, if you're talking to a friend or a loved one or someone that you think really hold in high esteem, what would you tell them? And you can come, I would tell you, I would say, well, then what's so different about you? And I know that people can easily come up with an answer to that, but you're wrong. Whatever you think is so different about you that what your good advice would be doesn't apply to you. No, no.
Because right, the bottom line is, if you're unable to do that voice that branded you as a baby is louder than your actual real inner voice.
Right. Exactly. Or as as a child, like, yeah. I think in my favor, I don't know if I was branded any one of those three things as a baby. I can think of points in my life where, I was branded as each of those things, but I know that as a young child, my parents saw me as a challenger. They saw me as difficult at times. And so that would probably be to my favor here and now and in moments like this. But there's times where it's, it certainly has not served me. But, again,
it served you when it was important.
Served me, yes, did serve me when it was important, for sure. And many times, like I said, I've been through enough, right? So I was leading a protest when I was 11 in school. I led a sit-in.
Well, there you go. And so here's the thing, though. If this is something you want to aspire to have this courage that was so innate to Torva, I ask you just to be answering to yourself, well, what if I were Torva, what would I do? What would my choices be?
I'm gonna have to start making bracelets now that say, what would Torva do?
Hey, listen, go to torvalogan.com. She might be offering it by the time this
that down.
Episode launches, y'all. Like, you can be an early adopter, get it before they're like thousands of dollars. That's what I'm saying, because she's going to turn it.
Proceeds going towards ovarian cancer.
That's exactly what I was going to say. All right, so audience, I do need to bring this wonderful fast. How did this time pass by so quick? Torva, you're going to have to come back. Okay, come back. We'll have other conversations. All right. And then remember, you can find all ways to contact Torva at torvalogan.com. Remember, you still have my gift of the danceandheal.com course. And then we're going to see you guys next time. Thank you so much for coming, Torva. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Dance to Heal with Jenny C. Cohen. Come back next time to hear stories of recovery through movement and learn more ways that you can move your body. To work with me and continue your journey, visit outsideinrecovery.com. Are you ready to move?